We first began working in Haiti in 2006. We'd heard quite a lot about Haiti over the years, about the poverty there and about the way people were suffering there and about the needs, and we had the desire to try and help there. I met this priest called Father Tom Hagen, and he's an American priest. He's been there for about 10 years, and he's done an amazing work in the slum called Cité Soleil, which is perhaps one of the most notorious slums in the world. And the focus of his work there has been to build 10 schools, and in the midst of the suffering there are these amazing school buildings. And so from very early on, meeting Father Tom, we felt that we could work very closely with him by providing meals that would get children into those schools. I would describe Cité Soleil as the worst poverty I've ever witnessed anywhere in the world. Cité Soleil is built on a rubbish dump. There's about 500,000 people living there on an area around the old port area of Port-au-Prince. Most people's houses are tin shacks built amongst the rubbish. Pigs rooting amongst the rubbish, open sewers. When I think of Cité Soleil, it's just the children that gather around you when you walk through Cité Soleil, who are very obviously malnourished, who are obviously very hungry, who are very often completely naked or dressed in rags. By the time of the earthquake, we were feeding in Haiti, in total we were feeding about 12,000 children every day. About half of those were in Cité Soleil. It was a particularly effective project in terms of drawing the poorest children into school, into places of education. Obviously it was very, very chaotic. People everywhere, all over the streets, even the airport, landing in the airport, people all over the runway, unloading planes, no functioning airport building, people just walking out of planes onto the street. Just so many different things going on, a really very chaotic scene. Everyone in Cité Soleil and in Port-au-Prince at that time was sleeping outside. Even those that still had buildings that they could sleep in were choosing to sleep outside because of the trauma that they'd suffered. In some ways, I don't think life changed so radically for people in Cité Soleil. That's not in any way to underestimate the effect it did have. The hardest thing for me to go and see this time was the fact that all those schools that we provided Mary's meals for in Cité Soleil have all been very badly damaged, probably to the point where they'll need demolished and rebuilt from scratch. In terms of our own projects and what was happening with them, it was incredibly moving going back into Cité Soleil and doing a tour of all the schools and seeing what had happened to those buildings. And probably what was most moving was meeting the children who used to go to those schools in the rubble outside before the earthquake. So that was very moving and a real kind of sense of where do we start? How do we start again in this mess? And again, that was one of the things that amazed me and really encouraged me and gave me hope. Was within those first few days already we were involved in organising work teams to begin picking through that rubble around the schools to create secure areas from which emergency feeding could take place. Aside all that kind of horror and chaos, I was really struck by some of the signs of hope even in those very early days. And one of the things that really amazed me was seeing people already within a week of the earthquake rebuilding some of the walls around their compounds and working very hard to get some normality back in their life again. And I was really surprised by that. I didn't expect that to be happening so quickly. I think people of Haiti are incredibly resilient. I think that really showed itself in the days after the earthquake. We've been doing what we can, and we've been getting a lot of food to a lot of hungry people in Cité Soleil. In terms of feeding the children again, we'll have the temporary schools up, and that school feeding pretty much in the same form it was before, will take place, and that all those children, those 6,000 children who were enrolled in the schools previously, plus the street children, will start to be fed again in those temporary shelters. We're trying to get a sense of normality back for those children as much as possible, and we'll be very happy to have done that within that short period of time. Beyond that, our desire is to get the schools rebuilt, and that will become our focus beyond that, to get those schools rebuilt and operating again, and Mary's Meals being provided again within those. More than ever, what we're looking for help now with is funding to expand Mary's Meals so that we can start providing many more children in Haiti with daily meals in schools, in Cité Soleil, in Port-au-Prince, and in other parts of Haiti as well. That remains our goal in Haiti, and it remains our belief that that's really what ultimately is going to lift the poorest communities in Haiti out of poverty. When Mary's Meals first began as a campaign, I was giving talks to people. I would share with people sometimes that our vision for Mary's Meals is that every child in the world should be able to receive at least one good meal every day in a place of education. And that's what we believe, that is our vision. And we believe if that vision is realised, it will transform the developing world. It will be one of the key things that lifts the developing world out of poverty and out of reliance on aid. But I remember in the early days when I would share that vision with people, people would look at me like that I'd really lost the plot, that I was mad, and that we were mad to have such a grand vision. But the more I see Mary's Meals and the more I see it grow and how it's really working in terms of getting kids into school, the more I think it's much more mad that children today are dying of hunger-related causes. 100 million children didn't go to school today because of poverty. I think that's much more mad in this world of plenty that's happening. Please God, Mary's Meals will continue to grow. We're not an organisation that sets targets or does much strategic planning. We just have a huge confidence in the innate goodness of people. That's our experience all these years, is that many people around the world want to share what they have with those that don't even have the basics in life. And that's why Mary's Meals grows, and that's why we believe it will continue to grow.